everybody. Today we're going to be focusing on how to evaluate sources of information. This is a skill that is really critical for you as students, but also as informed citizens of the world. There is a lot of information out there on the internet as well as elsewhere, and it's really important that you be able to sort through what is a reliable source of information and what is not. So the method that we're going to be using for evaluating sources is something called the CRAP test. And I so wish I could take credit for creating that acronym, but I cannot. It was actually designed by librarians at Cal State University in Chico. And the acronym CRAP stands for Currency, Relevance, Authority, Accuracy, and Purpose. So what we're going to do today is just go through each one of these and look at how you could apply this to websites. Frankly, it can apply to any other source as well. I'm just focusing on websites since that's where students tend to get the majority of their information. So our first standard here is currency, and this has to do with just how up to date is the information. So when was it published? If they're giving you references, are those up to date? The importance of this one honestly will depend a lot on your topic. If you're reading about Shakespeare, Shakespeare hasn't changed a whole lot in recent years. His sonnets are still the same. There are some new understandings of his work, but it's basically the same. A 10-year-old reference, probably not a big deal. But if you're looking at something that's 15 years old and it claims to have cutting-edge brain research, well, our understanding of the brain changes rapidly. 15 years old is going to be ancient by that standard. So anytime you're looking at a source, you want to see, does it tell you when it was published or when it was last updated? Next criterion is relevance, and this has to do with whether this source is relevant for what you are looking to do. So does something answer your question? Obviously. But also, who is the intended audience? If I'm looking for information for parents, I'm not going to send them to scholarly journals aimed at physicians because it may use jargon that's inappropriate for them. It may just go into way too much detail. On the other hand, if I'm looking for resources for my colleagues in the psychology department, they do have that background knowledge, and I am going to want sources that acknowledge that they have this background. So we have currency, we have relevance. Our third standard is going to be authority, and this one is key. Who's actually providing this information? So who's the author of an article? Who owns the website? What are their credentials? You know, if I'm getting medical information, I'd like to get it from perhaps a physician, someone who actually has that knowledge. And you want to have specifics. You know, just because someone has doctor before their name, well, they could be a medical doctor or they could have a PhD in history. I'd want to know that before I start taking medical advice. There are a lot of ways that we can get information about who the authority is. Sometimes you'll just have a biography of the author at the bottom of a page. If the page belongs to an organization that is a very well-known site or a very well-known group, like if it's from the American Academy of Pediatrics, they're the leading organization of pediatricians, I'm going to trust them for information about kids. But sometimes it's not quite so easy, and I want to give you a couple of examples here. First of all, one way that you can try and get this information is you can look for links that say things like about us or philosophy or biography. So get information about the author or the organization. So here's an example. This is from a website called eHow. I've had a lot of students use eHow in papers. eHow is a content mill. Anybody can post anything. They are paid simply by how many ads they get people to click on. So up here, if we look at this particular page, Biological Causes of Depression, we see that we do have information about the author. And if we click on this person's name, we're going to get a biography. So I look at this biography and I see that this person is a journalist and has been writing for 20 years. She attended Ringling School of Art, Charter Oak State College, and has a master's degree from the University of Metaphysics. So here's the thing. This woman may know a ton about depression. It may be that everything on this page is entirely accurate. but she's given me nothing to tell me that she is in fact an expert on this topic. So my feeling is if I want to know about depression, why go to this site which is kind of iffy when I could instead go to a website that I know is going to have reliable information, like the American Psychological Association. So that's an example of where you really want to see what are this person's qualifications. There are other times where you might not know from the original page. So we can look and see who is a sponsoring organization. Delete everything after the first slash and say, okay, in this example I've given here, cdc.gov, that's the Center for Disease Control, federal government. I can trust they're going to have pretty good information. So I can do this to see who an organization is. And the last thing I can do if I'm not familiar with an organization is search for them. Because just because somebody says I'm the world's expert on blah, 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 doesn't mean they really are the world's expert. And so here's an example. This is a website for an organization called Generation Rescue. And if I click on their About Us page, the first paragraph tells us that they are the leading national organization that provides hope, information, and immediate treatment assistance to families affected by autism spectrum disorders. It's very impressive. Their website is very professionally done. It's got a lot of very scientific looking information on it. And if you were maybe a parent who had a child that had been diagnosed with autism, it's very likely that you would come across this site. And there's nothing here that's going to raise red flags. But if I go do a Google search and say, well, tell me more about this organization, I'm going to get to Wikipedia. And I know you've all been told never to use Wikipedia, but the fact is for most things, it's actually a pretty good resource. I wouldn't use it as a scholarly source in a paper, but if you just want an overview of a topic, Wikipedia is actually generally a pretty good spot. And if I go here, what I learn is that Generation Rescue is a group that advocates the view that autism is caused by vaccines. These claims are biologically implausible and lack convincing scientific evidence. And if I go down here to the section on criticisms, lack of peer-reviewed research, promotion of quack treatments, disassociation of cited researchers, misleading claims, that's some pretty damning stuff. And if I was to read this whole Wikipedia article, I would see that every major medical group disagrees with the claims of Generation Rescue. That's going to make me really start to mistrust this group, but it's not something I would have gotten from their website directly. So it's very important, if you don't know who an organization is, don't take their word for it when they say, oh, we're the top group in such and such field, because anybody can say that. So we've talked about currency, relevance, and authority. Next one we're going to talk about is accuracy. Are there statements that you know to be false, maybe from your textbook or your instructor? Are there writing errors? Do they have citations? Can you verify this information elsewhere? None of these is the kiss of death. Anyone can make a typo, anyone can have spelling errors. But on the other hand, if I'm looking for information on a topic and somebody's got a whole lot of spelling errors or punctuation errors, this tells me that there's someone who doesn't pay a lot of attention to detail, and I'm going to start wondering, well, how careful are they in reporting the facts as well? Can they back up their claims? And can you verify this information elsewhere? And then finally, we have to look at the purpose of a site. Are they trying to sell something? Are they trying to persuade you? Are they making their intentions clear? Are they trying to be balanced? Are they deliberately omitting facts? Do they have biases? If you go to a lot of websites, they may have a very particular religious bias, an ideological bias. Maybe their main goal is to get you to buy their product. So of course they're going to tell you that their product is critical, for all good parents or something like that. Well, of course they are. They want you to buy it. A lot of you may have been told that if a site is .org, that it's reliable, and .com it's not. That used to be the case in the very early days of the internet. At this point, that's not really a good distinction. There are lots of .com sites that are fabulous and have wonderful, wonderful information, and there are a lot of .org sites that are horrible. So one example, if you do a search for Martin Luther King on the internet, somewhere in the top 10 results, you'll usually get martinlutherking.org. You go look at that site, it looks like a very professional site, it looks very academic, but you do a little digging and you'll learn that the site is hosted by a white supremacist organization. Not exactly a group that's going to be unbiased when it comes to Martin Luther King Jr. So again, this is where you want to do your digging. Don't just always take the website's word for it. And finally, the last thing is remember that when in doubt, you should doubt. For most topics that you're going to research, there is so much information out there that if you have even the slightest whiff of doubt about a given website, don't use that one. Find one that you know is going to be reliable. If you're not sure, talk to your instructor, get some starting points from them. But why go and use the dubious sites when you don't have to? So that's it. Hopefully that has answered all your questions, but if you have any questions, please feel free to email your instructor. Have a great day.